Are you starting to plan a destination wedding and all of a sudden you look at your list and you're like, oh my, this is getting to be a really big wedding? If so, hold on and let's talk about how to plan large destination weddings. Hi, this is Jack with Vacationese. So as you know, you start planning your wedding and you put this list together and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and you're thinking, what am I getting myself into? So I want to give you some tips and hints on what to do for a large destination wedding. Now the first question you have to ask is, what do you classify as a large destination wedding? So what I would say to you is you start looking to be a large wedding when you get to be about 75 to 100 people, or let's call it 35 to 50 rooms. Now why does that matter? Because there's different things we have to look at. But let's take a step back before we even get there. So here is what I always suggest you do. Make sure you put your guest list in an Excel spreadsheet, identify who you think is going to come, and then once you have that done, if you go on the premise that every adult room has 2 people in it, so divide the total number of adults by 2, and that'll give you your room count. If you end up with at least 35 rooms, bingo, call yourself a large destination wedding. Now you definitely want to think about what to do. So a couple of the things you have to look at is, or what we as your travel professional or whoever you're working with will look at is, are there resorts that work better with big groups than small groups? And the answer simplistically is yes. So let's talk about what we're looking for. So again, if you're a larger group, you may need to look for a larger hotel. You may find one of these great boutique hotels that has 60 rooms, but they're probably not going to be a great location for you if you need 35 of their 60 rooms. So you really need to look at how many rooms you're going to need. So one of the things we'll start looking at is the type of events that you want to have. When I talk about events, are you going to have a welcome party? How about a rehearsal dinner? What about a ceremony? How about a cocktail party and a reception? Now when you think about these things, how many people will you be inviting to each of these events? Now let's say it's everybody. Whether it's adults only, family friendly, doesn't matter. Let's just go on the premise you're going to have 80 people. The likelihood is if you have 3 or 4, 2 different events, whatever it is, you probably don't want to have your events all in the same location at the resort. As an example, you may want your party, your welcome party, on the beach, and maybe it's informal, and you may want your cocktail party by the pool or in a ballroom. But the key with this is we typically don't like to see event after event after event at the same location within the resort. So for that reason, you really have to think about which location for which event and how many people. And the reason I say this is because let's say you decide you want the rooftop, and the hotel says, well, the rooftop is good for 100 people. You need to get clarification from the wedding department and or the travel planner you are working with. Because if you're working with a good travel planner, they're going to ask you these questions up front and not give you resorts that they know are not going to be capable of handling your wedding. But an example we've seen, resorts have a location, they say it's good for 100 people. You have to ask them is, what is that location good for 100 people for? Is it for my ceremony? Or what if I want round tables for my reception there and every table only has 8 people and I need a dance floor and I need a bar and I need a buffet line? So it's very important that you really find an experienced travel professional to help you with this, because they need to identify resorts that have venues that can handle your size group. It's very important, because what you don't want to do is get there and feel cramped and no one can dance, no one can walk, no one can get to the bar. Now the next thing you have to look at is, and I hate to talk about this, is what we call Plan B. So Plan B happens at beach destinations if you have an outdoor event and the resort perceives it may rain. Now, if it's going to rain, they have to move your event inside. Now, you have to look at where are they going to move you inside. And this is a very important question. You work with your travel planner to figure this out up front, because what you don't want them to do is, oh my gosh, we have 2 weddings and yours is going to be in the lobby or the basement of the lobby. You want to make sure they're putting you in a ballroom or a restaurant that is flexible. I've seen too many resorts that will say, well, we'll use the Italian restaurant. And you look at the Italian restaurant and it's all booze. And that's not really good. How do you go from an 8 top for your ceremony and reception to 4 people in a booth? It doesn't work. But again, this is a reason to work with an experienced travel planner. But you need to look at that plan B for your larger wedding. Now, if they have ballrooms, you want to ask them, how big are their ballrooms? And can they accommodate more than 1 wedding that night if it's plan B? So that's really important as well. Now, the other thing I think that's very important is the rooms. So if you're going to be a larger wedding, will the resort have enough rooms on your date to accommodate your guests? Now you think, it's a 500 room resort, Jack. Why can't they just give us 35, 40, 50 rooms, whatever we need? Well, 2 things. One is, some resorts will only allocate a limited number of rooms for weddings. So you really need to work with your travel planner, and they'll have to figure that out up front when they request a proposal from the resort or when they request the contract. Now, a couple things happen. People will say to me, well, let's just request 30 rooms, and later if we need more, we'll just ask the resort for 10 or 20 more rooms. Great idea, except it doesn't happen. Couple reasons. Number 1 is, most wedding contracts today will have a stipulation in there about group growth. Some of the resorts are limiting how large the groups can grow under the current contract, or some resorts are just saying, no, no, no. We don't have any more rooms that day. You're locked because we don't want any more rooms for groups. Now, you have to, again, talk to your travel planner about this, because some of the contracts will say, well, you can grow 10 rooms under the current terms, but if you grow more than that, it's based upon the fact if we have the rooms and the then current price. Now, did you hear what I said? The then current price. The important thing about that is, if you go for a hotel that does this to you, you may have guests that book under your contract, you exceed your contract rooms, and then as you request more rooms, the resort may say, okay, well, we know your first 20 rooms or 30 rooms are $1,000 for the 4-night stay, but these new rooms are $1,200. And then you really put yourself and your travel team in the position of trying to explain to these new guests that are booking late probably why they're paying more. So it's very important, I think, that you work with your travel planner, again, to get an accurate picture of how many rooms you should request up front. And then maybe you make sure that that hotel has some flexibility if you do need to add more rooms. Now, I know the other thing you're thinking of saying is, well, what's it matter, Jack? We'll just request 70 rooms. We only need 35. We'll give them back to the hotel. Well, we do have what's called reduction dates in our contracts, or the hotels do. But the problem is, many of the hotels will have a guarantee minimum you need to book. So if you hold 70 rooms, they're probably going to want you to book 70 or 80% of those rooms. And if you don't, there could be some penalties and things of that nature. Each resort changes all the time. And that's, again, a great reason to talk with your travel planner about this up front. Another, and this is really important, perks and benefits. So if you are a larger group, when you work with your travel planner and they know this up front, they're going to start identifying resorts that give away good stuff because you're a large group and you're bringing their hotel a lot of rooms and revenue. As example, there are resorts that if you have, let's say, 40 rooms and everybody stays 4 nights, you in essence could get your wedding for free, a reception for free, a welcome cocktail party. They give away a lot of stuff. Now, you also have to look at the wedding packages, because some of the wedding packages are good for 20 to 30 people, some are good for 50 people, some are good for 100. So again, as you look at the wedding packages, some of the smaller packages that as you start adding people get very expensive, and some of the bigger packages you may have to book a year in advance, such as the Beyond Memorable Wedding Package. So there's a lot of variables that you have to look at. And I'll stress again, it's very important. A, plan further in advance if you're a larger group. I would say minimally 18 months. And B, make sure you get with a travel professional that has experience in larger groups. They'll know which ones are easier to work with and have everything you need. Now, the last thing you need to look at from the room side is some resorts contracts are onerous when you start working with larger groups. Now, what do I mean? Let me just give you a simple example. If you're a group of 20 or 30 rooms, most resorts will ask for $100 per room deposit from you on the contract. Now, you'll get that money back at some point, but don't worry about that. And they'll allow us to return the rooms 65 days, 90, whatever, in advance. So if we request a couple more rooms we don't need, we can return, there's no penalties. But here's the problem. There are other resorts we're seeing that if you're requesting a large group, whatever that may be defined by that hotel, they may request 10% of room revenue. Now, what does that mean? Let me give you an example. Let's say the room is $1,000 per person for a 4-night stay. That's $2,000, and now you're going to request 50 rooms. The room revenue could be over $100,000. So the hotel could ask from you a $10,000 deposit instead of a $4,000 or $5,000 deposit. So these are just some things I would caution you if you are going to have a large wedding, which is great. We love large weddings, but it's very important you identify some of these items when looking at a large wedding. But the reality is, if you find the right travel planner to work with, they're going to do all this work for you and only bring you resorts they know play well with large weddings. So hopefully this information has been helpful. Hopefully you're planning a large destination wedding and you're going to have a blast at your destination wedding.